The Philippines is defying the odds, changing perceptions. We are a society that recognizes women and men should enjoy the same rights, equal pay, equal opportunities. The Philippines is one of the most gender-equal countries in the world. Number 8 globally, number 1 in Asia. There's no stopping our progress, not even the multiple barriers getting in the way. Careers have no gender, nor does education. Human rights is for all. There's no stopping our country, no detours, no turning around. We just need to keep moving forward to defend and protect equality, to better the balance, to better the world.
We will be joined by women who are breaking down gender barriers. For this part of the program, we will have a panel discussion on women in the workplace. Let's bring in the members of our panel. Our first panelist is a restaurateur who co-founded the Moment Group. The company is known for its innovative homegrown restaurants such as Manam, 8 Cuts Burgers, Uma, Shawawama, Mo Cookies, Bank Bar, Mecha Uma, and the Mess Hall and Test Kitchen. The group is also responsible for the Philippine franchise of the half-a-century-old award-winning Din Tai Fung. Are you hungry yet? We will have time for that later. She also co-founded the retail company that brought the global brand Havaianas to Philippine consumers. Please welcome Aba Napa. Hi, Aba. Next, we are excited to welcome Cecile Dominguez Yuriko. She is the founder and CEO of Evident, an integrated marketing communications firm that helps challengers and change makers succeed in today's complex communication environment. She is also a fellow of Asia Society's Asia 21 Young Leaders Initiative, a future hero by Uniqlo Philippines, and recognized by Campaign Asia as one of the Women to Watch 2018. Cecile, we're so glad that you can join us today. Please take your seat. Our next panelist is one of the Philippine Publishing's esteemed editors. She's the new executive director of the Center for International Trade Expositions and Missions, or CITEM, the export promotion arm of the Department of Trade and Industry. Before joining public service, she was editor-in-chief of Preview magazine from 2001 to 2016 and Style Bible PH, which is now called Preview.ph, from 2008 to 2016. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pauline Suaco Juan. Thank you, Pauline, for joining us today. And finally, we have here with us a multi-awarded advertising executive, the chair mom and Chief Creative Officer of Dentsu, Jaime Saifu. She is called Queen of the Advertising World and is the first Filipino to be awarded the Creative of the Year for Southeast Asia in the Campaign Asia Pacific Agency of the Year Awards. She's also the only woman in the top 20 creative directors in Asia. I'm honored to introduce to you Marla Jaime. The first question I want to ask you, ladies, is are you happy with the balance of men and women in your company, in your own organizations? Maybe we can start with Marla.
We have more women in my company, which is good. So the balance is pretty much. But I would want to have more women leaders. So when I say that, they move up to lead groups, teams, whatever. So, but I'm happy with the number, at least. So there's a lot of training happening for that.
So we'll ask you later what are the challenges that's keeping them from getting up there. But Pauline?
Yes. No. At CITEM, we are primarily women-led. So out of maybe about 140 employees, 90 of them are women. I guess if you're talking just about leadership positions within CITEM, I think women rock there.
Cecile, on your end.
So Evident, my company is 5 years old, and actually my entire senior management team is female right now. So when I was actually thinking about the question, I said, yeah, everybody in my leadership team right now is female, and in fact, even our office messenger is female. So we have a pretty healthy, I think, balance and representation, not just of women, but also LGBTQIA in our company.
Maybe I should ask now, where are the men? Okay, what about for Alba?
Now I feel a bit lesser because when I saw that, when we were talking about balance of men and women in our workplaces, I realized that I actually, to be very honest, don't know what the balance is between men and women at moment. And it's not out of ignorance, I think. I think it's largely because we do espouse a sense of meritocracy, I believe, at moment. And so when we hire, it's really just based on the capabilities you have that are not specific to a gender. So we've never specifically looked at it.
But Marley, I'd like to follow up on that point earlier. What are the challenges? So there are women, there are a lot of women in your company and in the industry itself. What's keeping them from getting to the top positions?
Well, this is not just in the Philippines, but advertising, marketing, digital, that kind of industry. There's a little bit of hesitation on leadership. And I went through and researched on that because I sat into a group in Cannes like around 2 years ago. It's called See It and Be It. When you see women up there, you become it. But eventually, I mean, that's why we put up that group, because we don't see a lot of leaders on top as women. The world and here, in my industry, I really like hearing that in the leadership of other industries, it is not the same case. So in my industry, I try to ask, because the women are major hesitate to become a leader because they know that this industry requires a lot of time. You know, I want to prove that you can be in the top C's and do a lot of, especially in our industry, and yet be a mom. I'm a mom of 4. That's tough.
Pauline, your own challenges in your industry, in your company.
I think I've been really fortunate that I've only ever worked for women-led companies. Merle's story about women feeling that they need to choose between a family and working work life has been something that is a recurring story between me and, let's say, my team. Throughout the years, they one after another, they would come up and say either I wanna have a family, I don't think I'm fit for this, or how do you do it because I can't seem to manage or balance.
With Cecile, you have social impact concerns. You are also very much into the digital technology and how to merge that so that you can get your message across. What are the challenges of women in your experience?
So with Evident, we're actually doing a lot of work with different clients on women's economic empowerment and women's participation in the workplace. And you know, the challenge with the barriers, it isn't just structurally inside the workplace, but it's also outside. So one of the things that we found globally and locally is that we have to recognize that work at home, childcare, managing the household, that's also work, and that's actually unpaid work. There has to be a balance at home just as much as there's a balance in the workplace. And I think the second thing also is that when we talk about women's participation and success in the workplace, I think in the Philippines we also have to layer it with challenges of inequality when it comes to socioeconomic background.
Aba, in the restaurant business, what are the challenges of women there?
I think that challenges of women in F&B will likely not be any different from challenges of women in other industries, though F&B is an industry where it really consumes you and it takes up a lot of your time. So I guess an example I would give for that is, at least at moment, which is the only thing I can really speak of, the women that have decided to, that have not transcended and taken on another level are largely women that have come up to me and said, I am making the call that I would like to take a step back from my professional career because I want to be closer to my family and to my children and raise them. And I find that you can look at that in many different ways, I think. But I think that at least the women that I've encountered, it is a cognizant decision that they made that they want to do.
I was just wondering, do you think that women's voices should really be louder? Should we be working harder than the men to be recognized? I mean, you're all in that position already that maybe a lot of us would want to be in. How did you get there? Did your voice have to be louder than the others?
Well, I grew up where my mom didn't say, all my siblings are boys. So she didn't grow up saying, Abba, you can do anything that your brothers can do. She never said that to me. She said to me, and as did my father, you can do anything you want to, period. And so I think I largely grew up maybe naively and ignorantly, without the notions and the concepts of gender inequality and gender balance and gender bias and isms like feminism.
Well, actually, for me, the bias or the challenges that I face in work is more because I look really young. So when you're the youngest person in the room or you look really young, there are biases that come with, when you start trying to give, let's say, strategic recommendations, they're like, wait, how old are you? So it was less about gender than, I guess, the bias of, do I listen to somebody that's 20 years younger? And that challenge. And I agree with Abba in that, with my parents growing up, I was never told that I couldn't do something because on the basis of being females.
I grew up also with that notion that I could do anything, be anything, as long as I worked really hard to get what I wanted. And so it wasn't a matter of my being female that would preclude the choices that I had. And to be really honest, it would be things like because you like fashion or you're overly concerned with fashion and maybe you don't have the credibility to bring substance to the table, or because you're a pretty girl so you don't have, you're not capable of a more substantial conversation. I would notice that a lot of these things would actually come from other women. When you talk about men and how there's a fraternity and they all help each other, I think that for women, that sorority is not the equal word, but that community of women helping women, building on what one another.
Because in the advertising world, we know that it's very challenging. Women in sales, for example, they have clients in a position of power, for example. After you answer, we'll give we'll make space for the question of the audience, but I'd want you to talk about that.
Well, our world is what you see in the movies, okay? All the kind of, you have to shout in a boardroom. In the Philippines, we're lucky to have really good men. The men protect us, They have very protective men. Maybe because of your matriarchal society kind of thinking, we adore our moms. Our moms are very strict. But it's a different story when you start going, like I judge online, I judge all over the world in different, I'm the only woman in possibly a room full of 20 men, yan. Or in a boardroom in a Japanese company where I'm the only woman too. Okay, here's where you see in the movies when you say an idea, nobody reacts. And then a man says the same idea and everybody reacts. I've experienced that every single time, but I don't let it pass. I go like, wait, that was one exactly idea I told you earlier.
Yes, Pauline, go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So we have a question here from Miss Chabel Velasco. She is the Communications Director, Publications Section Head for the Girl Scouts of the Philippines. So I'll turn it over to you, ma'am.
Hi, good morning, everyone. You are all really insightful and inspiring. There are many Girl Scouts in the room right now. Girls and young women, where are you? Girl Scouts. They must have seen you to be role models today. What advice do you have for them? Because a lot of them may be looking for a career in the future, and it may not be a career advice, but what could they do to help them become leaders in the workplace? Or maybe even before they become leaders, how can they be contributing members in the workplace? Thank you.
Go ahead, Pauline.
Find what you're good at and do it and be the best at that. And make no mistake, I'm not saying find your passion. That's different, okay? Because so many people are not good at what they love to do, okay? So find something you are good at and be the best at that. Work hard at it.
Go ahead, Abba.
My one little message to all of you Girl Scouts is also find good people to live your life with, to be your best friends. As early as now, know who are the people that can help make you a better person and influence you right. Because who you grow up with, no matter how strong you are in the beginning, will largely be affected by the context of your surroundings and who you choose to hang out with.
There's actually a specific industry in the Philippines where women are very underrepresented, and that's actually in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So there are very, very few women that graduate from college with STEM degrees. So sabihin sa'yo, ay, panlalaki yan na trabaho, don't pursue that career, dito ka na lang sa something else. So, for the Girl Scouts and for you young women, if you are interested in pursuing a career in STEM, in science, technology, engineering, go for it.
Mine is pretty simple. Just take out the fear. Don't be afraid, okay? Never be afraid. This guided me all throughout. Even if an opportunity poses itself in front of me and I know I can't do it, I accept it, I embrace it, and then I pretend I can. You know? I mean, the fear will disappear, and eventually you'll be good at it.
So she is a project manager. Our next question will be from Miss Rowie Huntilia.
Hi, good morning. It was very timely when you said you wanted a question from the corporate world, because in the corporate world, I agree that you have to shout to get heard, and there's an additional need for you to prove that you deserve the job that you're in. So I've never had a protective work environment, like you said, where men protect you. So how do you draw the line between that and coddling? Like, you're a woman, you need to leave earlier because there's more of a need for you to be home rather than here, and be with a man in the workplace because there are other needs for you. How did you work through that in that protective work environment?
I know the struggles. Just to give you an example, I would present in a boardroom, and when my time is there to present my creatives, right after I excuse myself for a bathroom break, my car is waiting, I have flowers. I go to Assumption and give it to my daughter who just finished a ballet recital on stage. Selfie, so there's proof. And then I go back to the boardroom and I go like, oh, sorry for the long break. Okay, that's how hard the struggle is.
Let's go first to sexual harassment. In 2017, the Me Too movement came to light, but as we know, it still exists and it has long been a problem. This sexual harassment in the workplace. Women who are victims are afraid to speak up or say something. Can we look at some of the reasons why and give our audience advice on how we can handle a difficult situation? Who would like to answer first? Your thoughts, or go ahead, Cecile.
Well, just at our company, we have an anonymous line, like on, people can fill out a form if they ever feel, something that they want to raise, that they want to remain anonymous. And then second, we did a gender sensitivity workshop for everybody on the team.
I strongly believe there is no tolerance for that. So in the workplace or outside the workplace, right? So if there is anyone who harasses you sexually, you have the obligation to report it.
I mean, growing up in advertising, you would probably, again, just like in the movies, you'll have that. I had my kung fu moves in an elevator. There was no way. I was so young then, but I was lucky to have someone, a buddy, like Don't Leave Me or something. I also partnered myself with a very good guy. Na whenever we had drinks, my world is full of that. Please, the two of us, always the two of us, okay? So we always have that buddy system. But I know the number one problem of sexual harassment is education, meaning you don't know if you're being harassed. Is this harassment? Is this harassment? So, teaching the young, are you being harassed? It could be a friend. So that alone pushed us to create an app. We called it Gabi. It's by Gabriela. It's an app where you can, it's based Facebook, it's a chat bot where you can ask, is what happened to me harassment?
As you answer that question, I'm going to ask you also for your closing statement, and we'll go from right to left with your closing statement. Go ahead, Abba.
Well, I think that the three lovely women that I'm sitting next to have answered quite holistically on the topic of sexual harassment. I think just coming from a different position that we have to lead an organization, it's really a primary at the forefront now how we manage that topic and how we ensure that our organizations have the mechanisms in place to ensure that people feel safe. And that's on both sides, both for men and women, and not just women alone.
Closing remarks. I think, wherever you are in your career, if you're a student, you're starting out, you are already managing a team, you all have, every one of us, each one of us as a woman, you have the opportunity to build, to define, to design your own style of leadership. And, understanding the values that are important to you about building an enabling environment, supporting other women, making sure that men are allies and, share the workload in the home. You have, even no matter where you are in your career, you have the opportunity to define and build your own leadership style based on these values that are important to you.
Perfection is a myth. And it hasn't always happened throughout history. So go back in time, women didn't have to do the labada, do the grocery, go to do the presentation in the office, handle HR, go home, be a perfect wife, a perfect lover, there's so many things that's expected of us. Do what you can, and then if it overflows, deal with it. Perfection, we all know, is boring anyway. And the fun happens, when just toss everything up in the air and then deal with it. And that's the way you get through life. That's the way you'll get through work.
I cannot agree more. Thank you so much, Pauline.
I've always been restless. I'm a restless soul. My fear is, which I try to really overcome every single day, is to be useless. To be useless in this world. I hang on to this one word equity that nobody else can own in my agency, in my advertising world. That gets me out of bed. That makes me discuss things with my daughters and everything else. That's the energy that's provided in me every day. So my question is, and I would leave you with that, think of your one-word equity before you leave this place.
Thank you. We would like to call our guests once again. We'll all go to the front of the stage for a photo session. Merly Jaime, Pauline Suaco-Juan, Aba Napa, and Cecile Dominguez Yuriko. A big hand for our panelists.
While we are making progress in many parts of the world, studies show that it's going to take another 170 years before we can achieve gender parity in the world. I don't know if you guys can wait that long. I don't think I can. Now, as parents, you know, there's a lack of awareness that remains part of the problem. And it's our duty to teach our children how to make them aware. Let's get them started young. How do we raise strong women? How do we raise strong, sensitive, and respectful men? How do we guide our children and how do we empower them? So at this point, I would like to introduce our panelists, starting off with Jayton Zulueta. He is the Executive Director of AHA Learning Center, a free premium after-school program for public school students. AHA has served over 2,000 students since 2009. Jayton is a trainer, he's an entrepreneur, and a teacher for the last 15 years, and he was conferred the 10 Outstanding Young Men Award last year. Next, let's welcome Marla Darwin. Marla is the co-founder of Girl Gang Manila, a feminist collective that seeks to create safe spaces for women to talk about the issues that really matter to them. She's also a creative director for Natural Selection Design and a momhood columnist for preen.ph. All right. And last but certainly not least, we have with us Michelle Alignay. She's a sought-after speaker and resource person in various forums, conferences, and media such as TV, radio, and print. Her solo book entitled Family Goals, Embracing the Imperfections of Family Life in 2016 was awarded the best book in family life by the Cardinal Sin Catholic Book Awards in 2017. So panelists, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Taking Charge, Balance for Better. Okay, lots of things to discuss today. What I wanted to start with was stereotypes and unconscious bias. Because whether we like it or not, boys and girls, sometimes they don't realize that the words they use, the cultural beliefs they might have can actually be a hindrance towards gender equality. So how do we manage and solve these things? Jayton, can we start with you?
Well, AHA Learning Center is a safe space for an after-school program that's a safe space for public school kids. So I noticed that myself, I'm guilty of gender biases, and it's important to have forums and to have thoughtful conversations. So a lot of our program is actually informed by a lot of stakeholder meetings with women leaders in our area and our students.
Okay, and among your students, you interact with them a lot. Do you see that they have their own gender biases as well? Are they subtle or are they very obvious?
Well, when we had activities in school, we would ask them, can you have a female president? And 100% of the girls in our center said, you cannot have a female president.
Even though we've already had two in
Even
this
if you already had two. So it's problematic.
What about for you, Marla? How do we manage these biases? And they can be difficult to address, especially if they're unconscious, if you don't know that you're doing it.
Okay, so in Girl Gang Manila, we fixate a lot on discussing culture. Representation already means a lot. And when I say representation, you try to break traditional stereotypes where my daughter sees her father cook. And that's something I didn't typically see growing up in my family or in my environment. Or my daughter sees me go to work. She sees me do non-girly things. And we're in a really great time right now to raise little girls because even their media is keeping up with breaking all of these stereotypes.
For Doc Michelle, you deal with a lot of kids. You've been a counselor at different schools. What do we do about this problem?
I just realized while you're asking, I've been a counselor for more than 10 years in all-girls school. So these things that we're talking about is already in my unconscious. And I work part-time as a lecturer in an all-female college there in Katipunan. And we are for empowering women. So I am also conscious on how we label things. So I'll go as a parent, I'm a mom of two, a 12-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl. I never labeled things for them that are just for boys or for girls. And then I also, while my daughter is growing up, I did not introduce her to the traditional Disney princesses. And also, label that these cars are just for boys, because we got my daughter a big truck wherein she puts her dolls. So we let them explore, and then we did not also label my boy that those toys, the cooking set, is just for girls. Because growing up, these are the unconscious things that our parents are, culturally, we have been conditioned.
Equality among men and women means that we can make choices freely, that our decisions are based on what we want to do or hope to do, and that we're not dictated by something or someone else. How do we instill this principle of giving our children the right to choose?
Every important conversation will be a lifelong thing. It will not be, okay, when she turns 4, we will have the conversation about consent. When she turns 7, we will talk about boy-girl relationships. In my experience, it doesn't happen that way. You start in little increments and it becomes a lifelong thing. So there's no playbook. So even the way I do these conversations, it all happens on the fly. Like when I'm changing her, when I used to change my daughter's diaper, it became a conversation about genitals, about like protecting herself.
Jayton, for you, you're not a dad yet, but it's like you have many children among your students. How do you sort of put that mindset into them that they can choose to do and be whatever they want regardless of their sex?
Well, a big part of our program is a service. So when you're 11 years old, our students, who all of our services are free, they get maybe 8 to 9 hours of free after-school programs, tutoring, feeding, values formation. And what we ask for them in return when they're 11 is that you should volunteer in another place. And when they volunteer in different areas, they notice, and we're trying to train them to be community leaders and try to bring them in the conversation of nation building. We notice that when we get into that leadership role, a lot of the leaders in the community are male. And we are silencing half of the population when we don't include them in leadership roles. So we notice the best way to teach about choice and how to figure out choice is to give everyone the opportunity to lead. These lessons that we're trying to figure out are best learned if they actually experience it. When women who have been silenced for so long suddenly have a position of power, they will fail. And we give them the opportunity and the environment that you can fail, but you can try again.
From the perspective of development, human development perspective, I'm not going to be technical, okay? But if you're a parent, can I see the hands of moms, parents here? Okay, we're a lot, and the younger ones. I also believe that equality starts when at home, when we deal with them give them choices, appropriate choices, age-appropriate choices, like the type of clothes they'll wear, the preferences. And also, when we start giving them choices, it's important for parents to understand the capability, the ability, the unfolding organic skills of her kids, her daughters.
My colleagues Sam and Pauline are standing by. Pauline Versosa, I think you have a question for us.
Yes, we have a question over from a student here. Okay, so Miss Tricia May Saison, she's a BS Psychology 4th-year student from the Centro Escolar University in Mendiola, Manila. So Tricia, what's your question?
Hi. Good afternoon. Thank you for giving us a rich information about gender equality. I have 2 questions. What is a healthy and balanced view between men and women that both sexes will be empowered and not intimidated the other?
There's this mentor of mine who's working with a male-dominated field in a corporate setting. And she said, you cannot go and do what the men do. So do what you do and do it best as a woman. So if the men wear suits, we women should wear dresses, but the substance is there. So I believe in that kind of being empowered, that I don't wear what my husband would wear because that's his. So it's acknowledging the innate uniqueness of the person, because that's equality. I know my skills, I know my strengths, and my husband, thank God, supports me on whatever I do. So whatever he does, his own giftedness, I support him. That's being empowered. So it's not even gender. It's about respecting the person for the way she or he is.
Anything to add to that, Marla Jayton?
I do. I like that Michelle said respect because I was going to talk about respect, where both parties already approach each other with this commitment to respect. And to elaborate on that, it's also respecting what women do in the sense that there's this term that we talk about in women's circles called the invisible burden, where if you start monetizing the kind of work women do at home, cleaning, child rearing, some of the estimates, they said if we were going to put a price tag on that would be 80,000 pesos a month. We've been delegating that as something that people are entitled to. And it goes both ways also, because right now in my generation, I'm meeting more and more men who say that I have a passion for running the household. I like to be more in control of the budget. I want to be more hands-on with my children.
80,000 pesos a month. I think I'm going to start charging my husband for the stuff I do around the house. Jayton, you have anything to add?
Well, I think it's important that every relationship has a good level of accountability and empathy. So as a man, I feel like we always tell our students, what's the braver choice you can make today? So the braver choice could be to stay in school, to do well, but the braver choice for a relationship between a man and woman is for the man to actually speak out, for a man to say that this is not right, because we, like being a man that is fairly conscious and aware of what I do and how I react is not enough. We have to start going out of our circle for men and for women.
So we have another question. I think Sam Sedwani, you have a question for us from the audience.
I do. I actually have an anonymous question over here. As parents, what approach shall we give to children regarding peer groups?
Sometimes we love our kids, but we might not love their friends so much. What do we do?
I guess your child doesn't have a peer group yet, except for playmates. Yeah, okay. You know, I always tell parents that we are not in control of what happens to our children outside the home. So the best investment that we can give is to have a solid relationship with our kids and started influencing them by what we do, but how we treat them positively. If we relate to them well, they know how it feels to have good friends who don't treat you less, who don't trash you, who don't backstab you. Where can we sanitize and empower them to have good and bad bacteria? It's inside the home. So that's our relationship with our children.
Right. Jayton, anything to add to that?
Well, I have a different point of view because I deal with a lot of children in conflict and children in conflict with the law. And I notice that these kids, when they come to me and they say that I've done drugs and I've done some crimes, they come to me and I tell them that that's not the real you. In here, in this small, safe space, you can be a good person. You can be full of love, and actually your future is brighter than you think. Kung walang naniniwala sa'yo, ako yung una. You suddenly become another home to that child. You can find another home in another person. And I believe that everyone has the capacity to be a home to another person.
Yes, Ria, we have someone who has a lot of academic experience when it comes to this topic. We have Professor Sylvia Mariano. She is the Director of Gender and Development for Taguig City University. So, question, ma'am.
Good afternoon. May I address my question to Dr. Alignay? Because she mentioned about toys being neutral for boys and girls.
Yes, ma'am.
Such that dolls are not only for girls and cars are not only for boys. I am for gender equality, but my question is, what is the risk, or not necessarily risk, but what is the possibility of boys becoming gays when they play with dolls, or girls becoming lesbian when they play with cars? Because we know that environmental factors are also strong in influencing gender.
Environmental factor is very strong also, but also with the parents, because if parents would keep labeling, the power of labels, the power of words is very strong. So if this is through play, if it's through play, and then it becomes a hobby for them. I've met some girls who grew up in an all-girls household. Siya yung kakampi ng daddy niya in going to car shows. but she's not a lesbian. So it depends also on how they are growing and how the parents are sending verbal signals regarding the worth of the child. The side there is that boys can play with dolls because they become nurturing. Para pagtanda nila, marunong sila maghawak ng bata. Diba? And then girls can play with the cars or screw so that when they grow older and want to be on their own, they can fix their cars. They can fix a broken bulb, and they can even fix the faucet. You know, and it's also developing the interest. This is for me interest-based, ma'am. It's not really about conditioning them. It's two different things. So it's letting them have the opportunity for each other. Equal opportunity for play, because you know we believe that as young as they are, play is the safest place for children because they become who they want to be. But it's also up to us adults to label and condition them to be the kind of person that they choose to be later on. I hope I answered you.
Okay, back to our panel. I want to talk about listening. So, you know, as parents, we like to think that we're listening to our kids, but, you know, maybe we're just hearing them and we're not really listening. What are the things we can do to make sure our kids are really understood and heard?
I'll go first.
Sure.
This is the common thing. I worked as a counselor before for tweeners, you know, tweeners grades 5, 6, 7. They will barge into my room and then, Miss, we're going to tell you something, but you're not supposed to tell our moms. Why would I not tell your moms? Because when we start telling our moms about this, you know, they say a lot. And then sometimes we don't want them to say anything, we just want them to listen. So I always tell, now that I'm in the other end of the continuum, I'm no longer a counselor, I'm into the parenting education, I tell parents, can I hear you moms? Moms, are you here? Yes, I tell moms, please bite your tongue. Zipper your mouth. We have a tendency as women to talk more than men, but there are times that really we need to listen rather than hear. Because when we start listening, our children tells us everything because they don't see us as judges and as commentators. Sometimes I tend, oh, why did you do that? Why did you know? We tend to comment a lot. We have a lot of thought bubbles. But in listening, if we really want our children to open up to us, we need to park our thought bubble. Okay, I'm here, I'm listening. Kahit ano pang comment nyo inside, we need to do that. Why? Because our kids will not go to us when we have too much comments and judgment, because sometimes they just need us to listen. The best conversations I had with my kids and when I remember to shut my mouth. There you go.
Right. Not always easy to do, but that's fantastic
It's
advice.
not.
Yeah. Marla.
Maybe this will help. So I don't have grown children, but I facilitate safe groups. And something that I use as a guide is you approach with curiosity rather than judgment. Because we tend to have to make calls already. For example, in a girl gang meet, somebody introduced herself by, "Hi, I am so-and-so, I am polyamorous, I have a primary partner, and I have a secondary partner," and of course in my head, but instead of like going through a usual barrage of like, "You're wrong, you're blah, 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 like what about monogamy, don't you believe in it," like that, but if you choose curiosity, which would be more like, "Why? What's that like?" Then it becomes a conversation. And that's what you, and at the end of the day, seek to find with your children. Because instead of it being top down, where it's just going to be a sermon, to add to what Michelle is saying, you want to be a good listener, but you also want to encourage them also to know that you are not going to judge.
Curiosity over judgment. Nice. Jayton.
Well, we talk a lot in the parenting seminars. Are you reacting out of love or out of fear? A lot of times when our kids come to us and they come in with a big issue or a big problem, a lot of the sermons and a lot of the questions are coming out of fear. And we always try to espouse that you have to understand the whole situation.
Can I add something? The common thing naman that I hear from parents is like this. My child is no longer opening up to me. I don't know what's going on with her. Sabi ko, have you been listening? I listen naman.
Naman.
How much listening do you have? Do you hold judgment and comments? And then they will be quiet. Because, that needs to be balanced well. That's why parents need to know when they should inject something. Because, if you believe in our kids, especially if they're growing, like they're developing to be teenagers, sometimes they just need us to listen because they have figured things out for themselves.
So I would like to get your closing remarks, your final statements. Jayton, would you like to go first?
Well, we always talk about the walk to the world we want at our center. And this forum, we talk about the ideas and everything, but how is it going to change? How is the spaces that we interact with every day going to change? And I believe that if anything that you can hear from my story, it's two things that I really want to espouse. One is that we've been working in the same community for 15 years, and we've had very little wins, but we're still there. And I'm willing to go another 30 or 40 years. So change is actually slow. But the few times that you find a little bit of wins when it comes to gender equality, or in my case, education, or actually in both, you have to celebrate them. The second thing that I think is really important is I like the Girl Scouts that are here because you have a community that's here already. You have to kind of journey with change with somebody, with like-minded people. And if your parents are kind of not so politically correct, then you have to go and find another family that will espouse this.
Thank you so much for that. Marla.
Okay. Since we're in a women's summit, I'm going to echo some words that I picked up from my feminist mentors, which would be that you can enter any space, any story in the world, and if you look for the woman's story, it will inevitably link you to a story of oppression. Like I already mentioned, the invisible burden. Because once you start following the woman's story, it can lead you down the path of like sexual abuse. It can lead you down to the path of exploitation, trafficking, the wage gap. And that also links to other societal ills that are also found in these oppressed groups that are linked to poverty, LGBT issues. So it starts there. So if you are a woman, follow the woman's story. And if you follow the story, you will be able to piece together solutions to our problems in this world.
And Dr. Michelle.
If you are a parent, if you are a mentor, a leader, a teacher like me also, I really encourage each one. Let's find the worth, the solid worth in each woman. Why? Because that's our women's strength. Women have the tendency to be very relational. So we have to use that relationship, that, love for conversation to really connect. The world in the social, we've been talking, Ria and I, regarding the most challenging part of raising kids now is really the influence of social media. So if we parents, if we educators, mentors, and leaders are able to have real, meaningful connections and conversations with each person, we see the worth, the strength, and that respect and regard for each person, the way they are, and each person will feel that somebody believes in me.
All right, thank you. Marla Darwin and Doc Michelle Alignay. If I can invite you guys to stand up for a bit of a photo op.